un nuovo webinar organizzato dalla Scuola di Alta Formazione sulla sostenibilità e l'economia circolare, appunto, di UnitelmaSapienza. Questa sera parleremo di tanti argomenti, le prospettive e le opportunità di collaborazione per soluzioni basate proprio sulla natura, la bioeconomia come alternativa per contrastare l'emergenza del cambiamento climatico e salvaguardare la conservazione delle biodiversità, seguendo proprio i principi di Agenda 2030. Ne parleremo con un ospite internazionale molto importante, la dottoressa Dania Quirola-Suárez. Buonasera. Però prima di iniziare diamo subito la parola al magnifico rettore di UnitelmaSapienza, il professor Antonello Folco Biagini.
Grazie, buonasera. Il mio compito è quello di darvi il saluto dell'università e soprattutto ringraziare chi ha organizzato la giornata nella persona del professor Morone e dei suoi collaboratori e ovviamente all'illustre ospite che animerà con la sua Lectio brevis l'argomento di cui trattiamo. Noi sappiamo, questo lo dico anche per la nostra ospite, che i nostri webinar sono molto seguiti non solo dagli studenti che seguono i normali corsi di Unitelma, ma anche da un pubblico molto più vasto. È un dato che abbiamo raccolto negli anni, ormai negli ultimi 2 anni, e questo è un elemento positivo per noi, perché significa che le attività che facciamo hanno, come dire, un riscontro ben oltre quelli che sono gli interessi anche delle studentesse e degli studenti iscritti alla nostra università. Credo che con la scuola e con le attività del professor Morone Unitelma si ponga, oserei dire senza come dire, enfasi, ma ai primi posti sia nello studio scientifico sia anche nella divulgazione di questi temi. Come sanno gli studenti, la bioeconomia è un tema anche per tutta una serie di vicende che ci riguardano quotidianamente, i cambiamenti climatici, i problemi alimentari. È un tema che riguarda l'opinione pubblica nel suo insieme e soprattutto per l'università che fa formazione, sicuramente anche la parte formativa che è importante. Sappiamo bene che in teoria la bioeconomia potrebbe essere risolta in un modo molto breve, perché basterebbe mettere in atto tutte quelle buone pratiche di cui poi sicuramente la dottoressa Quirola-Suárez e il professor Morone vi parleranno. Sappiamo anche però che poi ci sono invece dei dati di carattere politico, accordi economici, trasformazioni dell'economia, problematiche legate alle trasformazioni dell'economia. Ogni volta che un'economia si trasforma, come dire, ha anche dati positivi perché è innovazione, ma ci sono poi anche dei dati negativi. Pensate a tutti quelli che rimangono fuori dal mercato di lavoro perché non hanno la preparazione sufficiente, non si è innovato nella loro formazione. Quindi è un tema che, ripeto, interessa come studenti e ci interessa anche come università, perché proprio grazie a questa attività, al gruppo anche di studio che il professor Morone rappresenta, sicuramente c'è un forte impegno. La relatrice, è stato detto, è come dire, una studiosa che ha collaborato con l'Organizzazione delle Nazioni Unite per l'Educazione, la Scienza e la Cultura, per il Programma delle Nazioni Unite per lo Sviluppo, con la World Conservation Union, il World Business Council for Sustainable Development, lo European Financing Instrument. Quindi diciamo un'attività che la dottoressa Quinoa ha svolto a tutto campo, oltre al grande ruolo che ha avuto di negoziatore ufficiale per la conferenza delle parti nella Convenzione delle Nazioni Unite sui cambiamenti climatici. Quindi da questo punto di vista il webinar di oggi ci dà anche un'altra indicazione, che è quello che il nostro mondo, il mondo dell'istruzione, della formazione superiore, devono riorientarsi in un certo senso verso un modello di didattica che sia il più avanzato possibile, il più innovativo possibile, che affronti questi temi proprio per creare i futuri professionisti, se posso usare questo termine, che dovranno poi lavorare, cioè le generazioni future che dovranno, preso atto di una situazione oggettiva io ho qualche anno, si parla da molti anni delle trasformazioni climatiche, ma se ne è sempre parlato, oserei dire con una certa superficialità, se posso usare questo termine, cioè con una cosa che sì, sarebbe avvenuta, quando, ma vabbè, vedremo, e intanto si è continuato per dire, con le fonti non rinnovabili, con le fonti inquinanti. Negli ultimi anni la sensibilità, diciamo anche per fortuna, a livello internazionale, a livello mondiale, è aumentata. Adesso noi abbiamo, secondo me, bisogno di due cose, mi avvio alla conclusione. Uno, aumentare la sensibilità dei singoli in questo campo. Due, però, avere dei, torno a ripetere il termine, professionisti preparati ad affrontare e anche a risolvere, perché anche se noi sappiamo che alcune teorizzazioni, per esempio le energie rinnovabili, sono tecnicamente, come dire, sembrano facilissime da realizzare, poi sappiamo però che invece ci sono una serie di problematiche anche in questo campo e quindi è assolutamente importante che un'università come la nostra, che diciamo è telematica e si pone e cerca, anzi ha come obiettivo quello di porsi tra le più avanzate in questo settore in Italia. Alcuni risultati anche in questo campo ci comportano, sia nel numero degli iscritti, sia nel numero dei master che facciamo, nei corsi di formazione. Quindi un'attività, come dire, che si espleta attraverso tanti campi, in questo caso l'economia, abbiamo anche però dei giuristi con i quali il professor Morone sicuramente lavora, perché come sapete bene l'economia o gli studiosi di economia possono indicare delle soluzioni, ma poi ci vogliono anche non solo le trasformazioni tecnologiche, ma anche quelle giuridiche, perché se non si dà un impianto giuridico a tutte, diciamo, queste ipotesi che noi facciamo, non saranno mai realizzate. Occorre per esempio un grande accordo internazionale, una grande, già in parte è avvenuta, in parte dovrà avvenire, spesso non ci soddisfa nell'immediato, però vengono posti dei risultati magari parziali che però nel tempo potrebbero portarci veramente a, virgolette, salvare il pianeta. Ecco, usiamo questo, diciamo, termine che sembra un po' drammatico, che però deve indurci a lavorare sempre di più e meglio. Quindi grazie alla dottoressa Quirola-Suárez, grazie al professor Morone e grazie a tutti coloro che ci seguono e che ci motivano anche in questa nostra attività di università piccola, ma che vuole essere un punto di riferimento, specialmente in certi settori d'avanguardia. Quindi grazie e buon lavoro. Non si sente.
Allora, grazie. Magnifico rettore di Unitelma, il professor Antonello Folco Biagini, e ricordiamo a tutti coloro che ci stanno guardando sul canale ufficiale di Unitelma YouTube che possono inviarci le loro domande per la professoressa Quirola al termine della sua Lectio brevis. Ma diamo subito la parola adesso al direttore della Scuola di Alta Formazione sulla sostenibilità e l'economia circolare di UnitelmaSapienza, il professor Pier Giuseppe Morone, che introdurrà l'incontro.
Grazie Roberto e grazie Rettore per questi saluti e le parole di introduzione che hai voluto spendere, che hanno in effetti, diciamo, aiutato i nostri studenti a capire appunto come si inquadra questo seminario e questo webinar, e grazie evidentemente alla nostra relatrice, alla dottoressa Dania Quirola-Suárez, per essere qui oggi con noi. Dania, I will say a few words in Italian and then I'll switch to English, ok? Il seminario sarà in inglese, quindi adesso dirò alcune cose brevemente in italiano, poi alcune cose, considerazioni in inglese, per poi lasciare la parola alla nostra relatrice. Dunque, il tema della transizione è centrale, lo diceva prima il magnifico Rettore, è centrale perché evidentemente ormai c'è una consapevolezza tale per cui il business as usual, cioè il modo di fare tutto quello che facciamo, dalla produzione ai consumi, è insostenibile, e quindi dobbiamo andare verso nuovi modelli. modelli, dobbiamo studiare nuovi modelli e qui diciamo, è il nostro ruolo di ricercatori quello di aiutare a studiare questi nuovi modelli, a sviluppare e ad implementare questi nuovi modelli. Ce ne sono tante di parole chiave che circolano tra diciamo, gli studiosi e i policy maker e sicuramente diciamo, due parole chiave che stanno al centro del dibattito oggi più che mai sono quella della bioeconomia e quello dell'economia circolare. Questi sono due temi fondamentali perché rappresentano insieme in realtà il combinato disposto di queste due cose, cioè la circolarità, l'introduzione di modelli circolari all'interno di un modello che evolve verso l'impiego di biomasse anziché di petrolio sostanzialmente e di risorse fossili non rinnovabili ma fortemente inquinanti, bene, diventa, come dire, una possibile strada per rilanciare questa transizione. E questo appunto ci stimola a fare ricerca, ma ci stimola anche a formare, appunto perché il mondo del lavoro cambierà di pari passo con i cambiamenti nella produzione, nei consumi di cui stiamo parlando. E quindi formare gente che possa facilmente trovare una collocazione in un mondo del lavoro che cambia in questa maniera diventa fondamentale. Quindi quello che dobbiamo fare è capire qual è la traiettoria di questa nuova transizione, capire in particolare, questo è lo sforzo che faremo oggi, il ruolo che la bioeconomia e l'economia circolare possono giocare nel definire questa traiettoria e, come dire, lanciare un messaggio a chi ci ascolta perché appunto si comprenda quanto la formazione insieme unitamente alla ricerca in questi settori diventa, diciamo, una chiave di volta per rendere la transizione efficace ed effettiva. Okay, so I will now just say a few words in English for introducing our guest, Dania. As our director was saying, Dania has a very large experience in working for international organization. But I think that what can be really relevant for today's audience is the perspective that Dania will bring into the picture today, which is a perspective, is a non-European perspective, is a Latin American perspective. So it's the perspective of someone who has seen the ongoing changes from the so-called global South. And this is very relevant. Why? Because one of the major clashes that we have in this transition is also related to the relation and how it will change between the global North and the global South. So this is really, I think, a relevant issue to look at the same problem from different perspectives. It will enable us also to broaden our view and our perspective, and also to consider how other people from the other side of the world see this ongoing transition. So I think I've said too much. I will now leave the floor to Dania. And again, thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and we are all looking forward for your lecture. Thank you.
Buongiorno, sono molto felice di avere questa possibilità da essere invitata per Giuseppe, essere con un magnifico rettore di Sapienza. Grazie mille per avere questa opportunità e anche a Roberto Sciarrogne per la introduzione. Questo giorno noi parleremo sulla bioeconomia, con questa prospettiva da dove io vengo, che è l'Ecuador. Allora, the topic that we'll be addressing today is bioeconomy, a shared story from a mega biodiverse country to Europe. The story begins in Como. I was an exchange student in Como 30 years ago, and I had the opportunity to enjoy this beautiful landscape and the history of Italy. I was an exchange student with Intercultura and American Field Service for a year. And I took this picture as an example because I really enjoy the possibility to be connected with nature, visiting the lake, being a traveler, also going through the paths in the high hills and it has been so beautiful experience to learn more about your culture, to learn about how Europe thinks. When we think about sustainable development goals, the first one has to deal with poverty alleviation. And this is something that's very important to us, and it's also a concept that is a reality. It's not only a concept, but a reality in the whole world. And I also want to have this perspective in terms of what does it mean to live in a developed country, and what is the insights that Europe can bring into my life. This experience of living with an Italian family really changed my worldview and opened my eyes to the global situation. So when I came back to Ecuador, which is a small country located in between Colombia and Peru, I could see much more the richness of the country. Yes, we do have different challenges that we need to face, but it's a very privileged country in terms of richness in biodiversity, different kind of cultures, as well as the opportunities of living in peace. I think that we are very privileged of having this small and not that small when we think in terms of the abundance of natural heritage. So as you can see in this graphic, we have the planet, we have North America, South America, and Ecuador. And the name is because we are in the equator. Most of the people relate Ecuador to the Galapagos Islands, which are amazing place. That is a topic that I could address in another opportunity, because we can learn a lot about blue economy and how we can make the relationship in terms of climate change and the risks. So we visited Como, and now I would like to invite you to go through the morning mist floats above the Tipotini River in the Yasuni National Park in Ecuador. This is the most biodiverse place on Earth, and we also have a connection with Italy because Italian cooperation was and it is one of the most supportive collaborative technical assistance as well as funding for particular projects. And one of them was focused on the Yasuni National Park conservation and our initiative called Yasuni ITT. This initiative was related to keep the oil underground, and I wish that this will be retaken, because the process was a long initiative in terms of inviting the global partners to conserve this area, so pristine and so important for the global resilience in terms of biodiversity conservation and climate change. Davide is going to help me with the presentation.
In a blanket of clouds, they awaken. Their canopies of green glitter in the sun. Their wildlife start to slither, chirp, and growl. And one of the planet's richest ecosystems comes to life. Rainforests are the oldest living ecosystems on the planet. Some can trace their origins to over 70 million years ago, back to a time when dinosaurs still roamed the Earth. While the giant reptiles have disappeared, rainforests continue to thrive, growing on every continent except Antarctica. Two types of rainforests are scattered across the globe: temperate and tropical. Temperate rainforests are mainly found in the mid-latitudes, often near cooler, coastal, mountainous regions. Tropical rainforests are primarily located in warmer climates, between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. As their names imply, temperate and tropical rainforests are the wettest forests on Earth, receiving up to about 33 feet of rain per year. This precipitation plays a critical role in creating an exceptionally lush and biologically diverse habitat. While rainforests only make up about 6% of the Earth's surface area, they are home to over half of the world's plant and animal species. This biodiversity creates benefits that extend far beyond the rainforest boundaries. Rainforest plants produce an assortment of food items, in addition to ingredients useful in everyday products and medicines. In fact, an estimated 70% of the plants used in cancer treatments are only found in rainforests. On an even larger scale, rainforests help to stabilize the planet's climate. Its lush green vegetation regulate global temperatures by absorbing massive amounts of radiation from the sun. They also absorb vast amounts of carbon dioxide and convert them into oxygen, about 40% of the planet's breathable air. Over the past few centuries, rainforests have disappeared at an alarming rate. Factors such as economic inequalities, human development, and demand for natural resources have fueled the deforestation of these rich ecosystems. At the current rate, rainforests, which have survived for over 70 million years, may completely disappear within the next century. But through educational campaigns, sustainable logging practices, and cooperation with local communities, deforestation may begin to slow down, helping preserve rainforests for many generations to come.
So we have seen the reality of these amazing ecosystems called the tropical rainforest. The image that we have here is one of the most pristine places that is part of the Amazon River Basin and also part of the Ecuador. So the facts are there. We know what it's all about. We depend on the tropical forest. We depend on the Amazon tropical forest. And the facts are helpful not only to talk about climate change, but also the importance of mega biodiversity, because these are the Earth's oldest living systems that have survived in their present form for at least 70 million years. We have a study about climate change and how from the industrial age we have impacted in a short period of time compared to biodiversity, 7 million years. They cover just 6% of Earth's surface, which means that the responsibility to take care of it is so precious because we have complex systems that are the home of more than 50% of the world's plant and animal species. 50%. So half of the plants and animal species that we have in the whole planet are located in the 6% of the Earth's surface. What does it mean? In 10 square kilometers patch that can contain 1,500 flowering plants, 750 species of trees, 400 species of birds, and 150 species of butterflies. If you buy a bouquet of roses, for instance, coming from Ecuador, because Ecuador is one of the main exporters of flowers worldwide, you will see only one species. Can you imagine what it means to have 1,500 flowering species? And in terms of trees, Ecuador has more trees per square kilometer than the whole United States. Bird watching is one of the most important sources of income for sustainable tourism. And the 150 species of butterflies are also so relevant for the pollination, cross-pollination, and how we can make the relationships between different species and also to understand the the circular process, I would say, and also the bioeconomy in practice. When I lived in Como, I remember that one of the most important industries was the silk industry. And for this, we need butterflies. We need to see the whole process. So we need the worms, and to see the whole process in terms of how biophilia and biomimics can also support us in understanding what megabiodiversity is and how we can have a better relationship with this megabiodiversity. You can learn more about this through National Geographic if you want to go in depth about this topic. Most of us have a background in economics. I had the opportunity to work for the World Business Council for Sustainable Development in Geneva. And as you could see, we have a vision for 2015 in the global sector, the largest companies worldwide. And we need to address also programs and projects, different sectors, hubs, and how we can relate the topics as the director told us. What about the media, the communication, the studies that we engage with? Pier Giuseppe was mentioning also how we can transform, I would say, the possibility of engaging in this sustainability change through our work. So I would invite you to browse through this image about the importance for the largest companies in the world that prioritize circular economy based on plastics, packaging, Factor 10, Alliance to End the Plastic Waste. As you could see, most of these topics are related to oil. And oil comes from different parts of the world, but we have one of the largest reservoirs of oil in the tropical forest, in the Amazon River basin. And then we also deal with cities and mobility. So how we can change into renewable energies, for instance, how we can have the changing behavior. The Magnifico Rettore said that we have a possibility to change our behavior. So it's a personal and also an influential aspect that we can have as people, as human beings, as well as economists working with transdisciplinary groups of people in order to find solutions to understand these systemic processes. Now we are talking using the digitalization and data, and it's so important that due to the COVID pandemic, we have another opportunity in terms of democratizing the access to information and to these kind of learning processes using the web. And how do we use the web of life? That's a question that is also related to decarbonization and how we understand, for instance, through biomimicry, how the built environment is really an alternative. In terms of climate action, natural climate solutions, new energy solutions, rescale, utilities, we really need to focus in terms of how the circular processes, the circular economy, are really providing integrated solutions. For food and nature, there are global agribusiness action on sustainable livelihoods, on equitable livelihoods. How this is related to the monocultures and how we are using or overusing water at the global level and local level. The certification is a very important topic that has been also understood through the UN global conferences. The policy advocacy and agency is really important. So how politicians, how climate activists or conservationist activists, how the local communities, how academia are influencing by their specific stakes in getting together, understanding what are the differences, but mainly how we can work together. how we can scale up positive and transformative solutions for sustainable development. The future of work. This is what you are the most interested in, because when I was living in Italy, I got this interest of the global culture understanding, how I can change my worldview. And when I came back to Ecuador, I studied at the Catholic University of Ecuador in the Faculty of Economics. I learned about this organization, this fantastic organization named ISEC. And through them, I could learn even more than what I learned at a classroom, I would say, in terms of sustainability. Because at these students' organizations, we were forward thinkers by the support of different organizations, mainly business organizations. So that's one of the reasons because I am here, because I am a sustainability practitioner since 30 years ago. And we are also talking about green jobs, how we can transform from, for instance, the oil-based economy, let's say an employee in Shell, and how we can work towards being an employee, a director, an owner of a company that is applying sustainability practices as their core business. Now, COVID is really, really focusing on how we can influence health for people and health for business. You know how this COVID and also air pollution, water pollution are reducing the capacity of people to be healthy and also to be at the full capacity to work in business. Human rights is pretty important as well as gender rights. And in the Ecuadorian Constitution, we adopted as the first country worldwide the rights of nature. So we need to also focus on understanding and learning and deepening on the human rights. And I think that is also related to what you have in terms of the economics of gender. We need to pay attention in terms of the transdisciplinary opportunities that we have on UnitelMA to relate also to these aspects of economics and economics of human rights. We have the Sustainable Development Action Policy towards 2030. Believe me, when I was 25 years old, I was the official delegate from ISEC to the Rio Plus 5 conference. I was a young person who was advocating for sustainability. We were 4 people from the young group of ISEC attending these conferences and aiming that the agenda to practice, the agenda to the Millennium Development Goals, from the agenda to action. I was also negotiating climate in the negotiations of UN on climate change and sustainable development. So it has been like Rio, Rio Plus 5, Rio Plus 10, Rio Plus 20, and we will be in Rio Plus 30 soonish. And it's not only about having the 17 goals, but actually how we can address our actions towards it. And this implies to have roadmaps. And these roadmaps are complex, and we have to work in circular economy or circular models in different layers. And then in the layers that you have is also in terms of research on bioeconomy and circular economy, as you are doing with Pier Giuseppe and this talented group of people. We need to tackle inequality, setting the business agenda. In these terms, we need to go through the value chains. The value chains that include, for instance, the cup of coffee that you are drinking or the chocolate that you are buying. These resources are coming also in the best quality from Ecuador. So what is your relationship with coffee and cocoa plantations? How we are paying back from the raw material through the whole process till you get your cup of coffee. And I tell you this because when I worked with the German Cooperation Agency, we were also implementing projects for bioeconomy in the Amazon River Basin. And I visited one of the local communities, and it was a young woman who had this coffee plantation in an agroforestry model. And she was saying, like, I would like to get more support to hire more people in order to maintain in a better way my plantation. And it was like so amazing to see that we had direct contact with the largest provider of roasted coffee in Europe, Quixote, talking directly to this woman and saying, okay, what we can do for each other. We still need to be much more fair in terms of how we deal with local communities and in terms of what do I pay $3 or I don't know, maybe €4 for a very special cup of coffee. And in Italy, you love it. So we need to report and so on that. Redefining value also in terms of reporting, shaping sustainable finance policy. I was mentioning this before. I mean, one of the major aspects that were dealt with in the climate change Glasgow conference, the 26th Glasgow conference on climate change, was the need to consider funding for the impacts that people are already having in developing countries. So what about these island countries that, yeah, many of them will disappear in the near future? So this is a strong topic. And many of them were like complaining and asking for compliance for sustainable finance beyond getting external debt. Because we are requiring or needing foreign assistance but in a different way. For instance, in the German Cooperation Agency, GIZ, this is a public company of the German government, and they have the personnel, German personnel, but also local personnel. So we also had the capacity to provide technical advice at the local level, but this is knowledge as well as funding transferring for large programs, let's say 10, 20 million US dollars. So we need larger investments. Then I think that we need to redefine and have our different kind of worldview in terms of capitalism. I think that we need to go beyond that. And this has to deal with stakeholder relationships for sustainability. And then how we prepare for forums. So I have a couple of questions here. And this would be nice that we could discuss maybe even using interactive tools in order to have you participating in some of these answers in another occasion. How do we keep the Amazon that contains over a third of the world's remaining forest, but we are losing it fast? How do we keep it? How these topics of circular economy, cities and mobility, climate and energy, food and nature, people and society, redefining value, can support also to keep Amazon river basin and its rainforests remaining. What about the ecological footprint of sustainable business solutions? I had the opportunity to be invited by Matthias Wackernagel, the founder of the Ecological Footprint Network, and we had a gathering in Siena actually. And we were presenting what was the initiative that we had in Ecuador, because we also included in the National Development Policy the ecological footprint in order to see how we can improve our biomass, but our biocapacity. And when you see the figures, it will be interesting to see a comparative analysis between Italy and Ecuador and to check up how are the trends and how we can do it better to support each other's, considering that these countries have different profiles, but also the possibility to increase the biocapacity. When I was there in Siena, I learned that they were engaged also on the ecological footprint for the Mediterranean. So then you have like a regional approach that combines different countries and how we can deal with it, both in terms of European efforts and the countries that are located in Africa too. So when we're talking about climate and energy, we usually talk about energy solutions. One of the largest companies focused on renewable energy is a German company called E.ON. when I was doing my master's program in Lund University. I was studying at the IIEE, which is the International Institute for Environmental Industrial Economics. And I am here thanks to one of my professors who is one of our teachers, invited guest teachers, who is Donald Housing. And we're talking about and learning about energy solutions as part of these industrial environmental economics. And one of the most important solutions was wind farms. This German company. And the pictures that you see is the windmill, which is called Roscoe Windmill in the US, which is the world's largest capacity wind farms. 627 wind turbines. 627 wind turbines. And you see the total capacity that we can produce in megawatts. Now, what is happening in the rainforest? Good energy solution? What are the impacts from the raw materials? We're addressing the threat of uncontrolled balsa harvesting in the CERC headquarters region. What is happening here? The issue is not easy because here in the wind turbines, you could see that in order to rotate the turbines, we have these large hulls, and these are made of balsa wood because it's really, really light. So this particular kind of wood is the one that we need in order to make the wind farms work, mainly in North America, European countries, as well as in other countries. I have seen some of them, the largest, also in Denmark, as well as in Egypt and in the Emirates. So beyond oil, we address these kind of solutions, but we also need to take into account the deforestation that we can create if we don't have forest management, sustainable forest management, and also how we can relate this to the rights of indigenous peoples, as well as how the societal impacts that they have in terms of illegal logging, in terms of payments for activities that are not legal, and how the society is changing. I mean, drug addiction is like trafficking, also including natural species, birds. So is not only good. I mean, the richness of the tropical rainforest, as you could see through the video, is just awesome. But this has to deal with this. And then we need to have this world view on the connection. It's precisely what Pier Giuseppe mentioned in terms of bringing this world view of what is happening here in the global south and how we can change also the energy solutions and make them really sustainable. Deep in the forest, we have people, we have cultures, we have lodges, this amazing Napa Wildlife Center at the Yasuni National Park. This is one of the best resorts ever in the middle of the jungle. This is Maria Jumbo, a woman president of a young Quichua community that I have the privilege to visit her and have her also as a speaker in the capital city in Quito, where I live. She shows her land, her culture, her handicrafts, her dancing in such a beautiful and soul-connected, rooted in the spiritual cosmovision that indigenous people have in the rainforest. She is a leader. She is a Goma. She is a guide. She is an inspiration. And she lives also with the wildlife, the Amazon jaguar, the brother and spiritual guide. So the sense and the meaning of bioeconomy is also a meaning in terms of our worldviews, our values, that what we stand for, what is our mission in life. We are so privileged that we have this access to higher education, as well as the possibility to have all the needs satisfied and the opportunity to also have an influence at this time of history. This is a very, very important time. We are privileged. So the invitation is that we can work together, hand by hand, the beauty of Italy, the beauty of Ecuador, the nature of Italy, the nature of Ecuador, the human beings, the multi-ethnical people living in Europe, and the multi-ethnical people living in the global south, in particular in the Amazon River Basin. We have one shared and irreplaceable home, our web of life, our circular economy, our bioeconomy. But overall, is one shared and replaceable home, our web of life. So we have a commitment here through academics, through the interaction with other stakeholders, because we have our planet's health and the future survival of all of us. Several people said, if the human kind, if humans disappear from the Earth, the planet will continue living. They don't need us. We do need the planet. And we have the possibility to make sustainability paths and crossroads together. So that's one of the things that I really appreciate for this webinar, to have the interaction with you, to have the privilege to get to know some of your colleagues, and to be grateful to Donald Halsey and Pier Giuseppe and all the global community of people who are researching and making practices that are combining these activities. One of the, I would say, one of the most important activities that Italy implemented in Ecuador was to allocate resources for the conservation of these tropical rainforests. As the Yasuni ITT initiative was not longer taken by the government due to several reasons, I could explain this another occasion, the Italian government decided to allocate over $30 million in another program for environmental practices that include circular economy, prevention of deforestation, and waste management. So we have resources allocated. We have the possibility to interact with this Italian Ecuadorian Fund for Sustainable Development. And I think that this collaboration in terms of academics can also be something very profitable for the global planet. I mean, for our home, the planet, as well as for our contribution as sustainability practitioners. So a final remark: we are nature, we receive and give back to Mother Earth. So a presto.
Grazie alla dottoressa Dania Quirola-Suárez per questo affresco straordinario, incontro davvero interessante, e lascio la parola al direttore della Scuola di Alta Formazione sulla sostenibilità e l'economia circolare, per Giuseppe Morone, per chiudere un po' anche questo incontro e affrontare, non so, delle suggestioni di cui lei ha trattato. Grazie.
Grazie Roberto. Thank you very much, Dania, for your presentation, which fulfilled our expectation, I would say. You really succeeded in bringing into this global South picture and providing us food for thought, also from a Western country perspective. I don't know if we have any question on the chat, but if not, I would like to take in this 5-10 minutes that we still have to ask you a question. One of the main issues that we are debating now in Italy and generally speaking in Europe, when we talk about the needed transition and the 2030 targets and the 2050 targets, is about the distributional effect of this transition. Dania, are you still with us? Can you hear us?
Excuse me, could you please I couldn't listen. It was,
Yeah.
the connection was kind of interrupted. Could you please
Okay,
repeat
yeah,
it?
I was just saying that one of the big issues that we are discussing now in Italy, but more broadly in Europe, when we talk about the transition, is the cost of the transition and how this will impact differently on different people. As you probably know, we are facing in Europe, all over the world, but I guess mostly in Europe, a huge increase in the energy prices. And this is having an impact on the households, and especially on those households with low level of income. So basically, there is a kind of trade-off between distributional options, distributional problems, inequality on the one hand, and the needed transition. So this is raising some debate in Italy and in Europe. What's the perspective of a person like you from Ecuador, and what is the debate? Is there a parallelism in the debate in South America and in Ecuador specifically?
I think that there are different levels, different layers to answer your question. There's a source of inspiration that we got at the Cleaner Production Summit a few years ago from an academic called Dominique Hess, and she wrote a book with an African academic called Christina Duplessis, and the publication is called Designing for Hope. So one aspect has to deal with the change of the worldview, then is in terms of how we can design systems that are more integrated, but also decentralized. For instance, you mentioned energy. For instance, if we have solar panel facilities, and we can introduce this in instead of using fossil fuels, it has a cost. But in the long term, you have a saving in terms of money, environmental impact. And I would say that in countries such as Sweden is easier because you can choose what kind of energy you are paying for. So when you get an energy bill, you can ask the energy company that you want this particular kind of energy. So I think that we can learn a lot about how the practices have been engaged. And we also always get this insight from the first class on industrial economics, which is like either the stick or the carrot. So we need to increase the taxes on carbon. I think that this is really, really important. And this has also to deal with sustainable mobility. So for instance, instead of taking the plane from Milan to Rome, I could take a longer way, a longer span, lifetime, going, instead of taking the plane, to go by train and enjoying Tuscany. So this is also a change in terms of personal activities. I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in New York, for instance. So I asked him, what's the temperature of the heating system that you have at home? And he said 22 degrees. And I was like, okay, why? Here in Ecuador, we don't have air conditioning, at least in Quito, we don't have air conditioning nor heating systems, because either we take different layers of clothing and that's it, So when we are looking like technical solutions or the necessities for energy, we really need to go through the global aspects, then the meso aspect, the business at the different levels. You were mentioning business as usual, and how we change to sustainability practices. In terms of funding, I think there are resources and encouragement for better sustainability practices in the European Union, for instance, and also in terms of the commitments that governments made for climate change. So one of the largest contributors is Germany. So what if Italy and Germany and other countries within the framework of the European Union, but maybe 2 or 3 countries, can enhance better in this kind of topics. Bioeconomy has been driven by this leadership, and I think that many of the solutions has also been recorded in the 2020 summit on bioeconomy. And there's also specific solutions that we have recorded for the climate change solutions, very updated. So I think that we can do. And yes, at the university level, we visited also the University of Barcelona, the Technical University of Barcelona, and they managed to reduce their ecological footprint by introducing better building design as well as resources management. So I think that through the network of sustainable universities, what you are using in terms of sustainable universities in Italy, you can also figure out more specific practices. But I also think that consumerism is one of the root causes of this problem. Because, for instance, I don't have a car. I don't own a car. I walk. I decided to live in an area of the city where I can walk and get access to everything. So it's like I get food direct from the farmer to farmer. I get the supermarket. I can go to the bank. I mean, it's not something that is something affordable for all people. But I think that then I can relate also to what is feasible in Europe, for instance. You can decide. And that's something that I mentioned when I was at a conference of the parties on climate change. And it was like, okay, we can make a difference because we can decide. We can afford to decide. So no car is one of the options. No heating is another option. Cutting the amount of electricity that I use. And one of the organizations that also provides this support, and I was also participating on some of the panels in Denmark as well in Paris, is the UNEP, the UNDP Environmental Development Agency, as well as the OECD. So the OECD has also resources for it, and they also have a branch in terms of sustainable consumption. I learned a lot from them. And I think that those are some of the ideas. You have a further question or another question that can support these. I can provide some input.
Thank you very much. E a questo punto direi che se non ci sono domande dalla chat possiamo ringraziare ancora la nostra ospite Dania Quirola-Suárez, sperando di poterla rincontrare presto, magari a Roma, per altri seminari e per altre iniziative in comune. Grazie a tutti, grazie ancora a Roberto, a Stefano Manfrellotti per aver organizzato questo webinar, al magnifico rettore per aver introdotto il seminario e alla nostra ospite Dania Quirola-Suárez. Grazie e a presto.
Grazie a tutti.
Grazie al cuore.
Presto.
Grazie mille.
Alla prossima.
A presto. Un abbraccio.